This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to learn more about how Surfshark lets you browse the web freely and securely. Plus, get 4 additional months for free when you sign up over at surfshark.com/skillup. Click below for that link or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Bit of a quiet Summer Games Fest this year, to be honest. The showcases had plenty of heavy hitters in there, but the media-only Playdays event was where you could actually go hands-on with this stuff. And other than Resident Evil 9 being playable, this year's show was mainly focused on smaller titles, AA's and indies. Arguably, the most interesting thing that we could get our hands on this year was this bad boy, the ROG Xbox Ally, a very smartly marketed and smartly designed handheld that opens up an entirely new category for Microsoft, the handheld PC, but also hints at the future of Xbox's next generation of hardware. I got the chance to go hands-on with this thing at a behind closed doors briefing featuring a number of people who were integral in the making of this thing. The product lead, the software lead, Xbox's head of user experience, and also Asus's product lead for the ROG Ally. I only got to test out Gears of War Reloaded on it. I was not able to capture any of my own gameplay, so anything that you're seeing here on screen is just generic gameplay captured from other platforms. So I think it's important first to clarify what this thing is and who made it, because I think if you watch the Xbox Direct, you'd be like, oh cool, Xbox are making a handheld. And that's kind of true, but it's also kind of not. A number of years ago now, PC manufacturer Asus released the ROG Ally, a handheld PC that ran Windows 11 and obviously was intended for playing video games. On spec, it was an impressive device with a higher performance ceiling than the Steam Deck at the cost of less battery efficiency, as well as a better screen, and most notably, the freedom to play any PC game, because obviously SteamOS won't let you play a whole bunch of stuff, namely things that require easy anti-cheat in the background, Destiny 2 for example, but also stuff like, you know, your Epic Games library and your Ubisoft Plus library if you're unfortunate enough to have one of those, or, you know, Game Pass games, for example. So the Asus ROG Ally was a pretty great machine that was held back by one big thing. Windows 11 really sucks at the best of times, but it especially sucks on a handheld. The user experience is not at all aligned to controller usage, and you know, it does do some touchscreen stuff, but it doesn't work very well, and it especially does not work on a screen this small. There was also the incessant need to update things, since Windows seems to want to update something or other every other day. Hibernation was also a big issue. Handhelds are meant to be the sort of device you can put down at a moment's notice, but Windows is still running a number of background processes during hibernation, all of which would drain battery life faster. More recently, the performance cost of Windows has also been revealed. Lenovo released a version of their Legion Go running Steam OS instead of Windows 11, and even though they have the same internals, the Steam OS version delivers better performance because it isn't being held back by all that Windows bloat. So that all sets the stage for a device that was good but was really held back by Windows. Enter Microsoft, or more specifically actually Xbox. See, Phil Spencer has been pretty keen to enter the handheld category for a long while now. It's something he's brought up on multiple occasions, to the point where it's been reported that Microsoft were working on their own first-party Microsoft manufactured handheld that would launch alongside the next Xbox in around 2027. Apparently these plans have now been scrapped in favor of Xbox improving the Windows 11 gaming experience, a point we will certainly come back to. So the handheld PC category is growing thanks to Valve and to a lesser extent Asus and Lenovo. Phil wants a handheld, but you can't just magic wand something like that into existence, so what do? Well, you start with a marketing partnership with a third party, and that's exactly what Xbox did at around the same time that the Asus ROG Ally first launched. They were giving away Game Pass subscriptions when you bought one of these things, and Phil Spencer would prominently feature it when talking about the different ways you could play Xbox games. It turns out that was just the start of the Microsoft Asus courtship, because this past week we met the latest fruits of that union, the ROG Xbox Ally, a device manufactured by Asus but co-developed by Asus and Microsoft. Photos of the device were leaked some time ago, and they weren't particularly flattering photos given the lighting and all the fingerprints, but seeing it here in these photos and then seeing it in the flesh, I can tell you that it is a far more handsome device when you're holding it. It is basically an Asus ROG Ally with handles, but those handles make all the difference in the world. It's the reason I refuse to use my Switch 2 without a case that adds ergonomic grips to it. dbrand.com/skillup to grab one of these, by the way, link below in the description. And it's the reason that the Xbox Ally feels so comfortable to hold. As soon as I picked up this thing, I was like, yes, okay, now we are talking. It obviously results in a bigger profile for the device. Kind of reminds me of the old Duke controllers from the original Xbox, but it is undoubtedly really nice to hold with weight evenly distributed throughout the device. One thing that I did notice is that it is quite heavy. I held the X version of this device, which is sporting the beefier specs than the base version, and as soon as I picked it up, I could feel that weight. That's something I guess I was more sensitive to this week because obviously I have been playing the Switch 2 all week, a device that is surprisingly light given its form factor. The Switch 2 weighs just 534 grams, while the ROG Xbox Ally weighs 715, so already you can get a sense of the kind of differential that exists between the two devices. For what it's worth, the Steam Deck OLED weighs 640 grams, so it's sort of sitting in the middle between the two. Also do note that the Xbox Ally is actually the thickest handheld PC on the market, more so than the Asus ROG Ally, more so than the Lenovo Legion Go, certainly more so than the Steam Deck OLED or the Switch. So if you are looking for a device that is light and thin, then this one is definitely not for you. Now, I guess would be a good time to talk about the specs on this thing, and honestly, they are impressive. There are two versions, the base Ally, which comes in white, and the Ally X, which is black. They both have the same 1080p 120Hz refresh rate LCD screen. It's good, but it's not great, and I'm actually quite surprised that the X version of this unit doesn't have a newer screen on there. It would have been nice to have something OLED, but I'm guessing this thing is already going to be quite pricey as it is, so maybe they were just looking to contain costs as best they could. The X version has impulse triggers, which are kind of like haptic feedback triggers and are a really nice addition that makes the device feel closer to a typical Xbox controller experience. Internally, the difference between the two SKUs is really significant. The white version has a less powerful chip, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 512 gigabytes of storage, and a 60 watt-hour battery. These are decent specs that are going to give Asus and Microsoft some flex to price fairly aggressively. The X version of this device is definitely the one to watch though. It's sporting 1 terabyte of storage, 32 gigabyte of RAM, and that RAM is faster than on the base model. Most importantly, it features the brand new AMD Ryzen Z2 Extreme processor. It's the first time we've seen it in any device, and it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of performance benchmarks it delivers and at what battery cost. And that's actually a really key thing to understand about this category versus how we typically think about consoles. Delivering more power in these devices is easy. Hell, just strap a screen to the front of an RTX 5090 and away you go. The question is, how long can the battery in that device power all of its internals? Valve were extremely astute when they designed the Steam Deck because they weren't looking to deliver raw processing power, they were looking to deliver the best balance of processing throughput and battery. And they did it so well that it is still the most efficient handheld PC on the market all these years later. Point is, the Ally X has a new, more powerful chipset, but until we're actually able to test it under different conditions and under different wattages, we really don't know how efficient it is. And that really is the key word when we're talking about these handhelds: efficiency. In terms of my own testing, the device I got my hands on only had a few very carefully selected games installed, things like Balatro and Vampire Survivors, and other very sort of simple 2D games. The only 3D title I saw on there was Gears of War Reloaded. I did boot it up. I did, max out the settings. The maximum wattage setting that was available within the device, I was able to get between 70 and 90 FPS while I was playing through the intro mission of that game. But that game came out quite some time ago now. It's not really a good benchmark test. And so we will obviously need to see how this thing actually performs on, more modern titles. So all of this is well and good, but do remember, at the end of the day, this is still running Windows 11. And given all the problems I listed at the start of this video, things like, user experience and performance and hibernation and battery life, etc., why would you want to buy one of these things? Well, this is actually where it gets really interesting, and I've kind of saved the best for last. During the presentation, Microsoft revealed that the Ally would still be running Windows 11, but that they're rethinking how Windows 11 loads and runs on a gaming handheld. For example, when you boot this thing up, it doesn't boot into Windows. It boots into the Xbox dashboard experience, giving you access to your Xbox library, Game Pass titles, and your library of games on other PC storefronts. And while they didn't list them, you can bet it's going to be Steam and Epic and probably a bunch of others. In terms of the overall aesthetics of this dashboard user experience, it's very similar to the current Xbox PC client. So if you've been using that for a little while now, this will feel quite familiar to you. But that's actually not the best part of the boot process, because when you turn this thing on, it is loading Windows 11, but it's only loading the most necessary parts of it in order to be able to play games. So it won't load a number of back-end Windows processes that result in the typical Windows performance overhead. It won't load, File Explorer. It won't load the taskbar. It won't load anything it doesn't need. And to be clear, you can choose to load the full Windows experience if you want to, in the same way that you can boot Steam OS into a desktop mode. That is not how this device boots up. Those other things stay closed until they're needed, and Microsoft claims that this not only improves system responsiveness, but it also frees up RAM and CPU headroom that can be directed toward game performance. And in fact, Microsoft says it frees up as much as 2 gigabytes of RAM, and they say they're still planning for further efficiency gains. Now, of course, we don't know if any of this is true, and I mean, I obviously believe them when they say that the taskbar doesn't load, but does that actually translate into, better performance in games? We don't know yet. That is an unproven claim at this point, but it's a logical one and an exciting one, frankly, since, if Microsoft can close the gap between Windows 11 performance and SteamOS performance, then that's a good thing for everyone. So, acknowledging that there are still a bunch of question marks around this thing and a bunch of unproven claims and the need to test its performance under different settings, what do I think of the ROG Xbox Ally? Honestly, so far, I'm quite impressed. I think the existence of 2 SKUs is going to make the handheld both accessible at the lower end and performant at the upper end. I think the ergonomics are fantastic. Even with it being rather heavy, I could easily see myself holding this thing for a few hours. I think the promise of a new chip and larger battery is exciting from a performance perspective. I think the dashboard experience is really clean and intuitive, protecting you from the pain of having to interface with Windows 11 on a handheld. In particular, I think the adaptations that Xbox are making to Windows 11 are really nice, or at the very least, they make a lot of sense, and I don't think it's too big a leap to assume that these changes will result in at least some performance uplift. I also think this device comes at a really good time in the sense that the Steam Deck is definitely starting to show its age at this point. It still handles indie titles easily, but it's really struggling with most AAA releases these days, and even with AA releases like Clair Obscur, it's unlikely that AMD's new chip will deliver a generational leap in performance, but if it delivers just enough to catch us back up to the current demands of Unreal Engine 5 games, then that will be enough. Finally, there's no denying the convenience and flexibility of Xbox's Play Anywhere strategy. This device can play every game on Steam, including stuff like Destiny 2 and any other game unavailable on a Steam Deck. It can play your Game Pass games, and given how much value that service is delivering right now, that alone is a really compelling selling point. It can play your free Epic games, your Ubisoft Plus games, your GOG games, your EA Origin games, everything. That is very attractive, and honestly, it's a problem that I think Valve are going to need to solve for if they want the Steam Deck to remain competitive into the longer term. Finally, I'll finish on this. The ROG Xbox Ally is, Microsoft's and Asus's gaming handheld. Sure, absolutely. But it's actually a lot more than that. When they revealed this thing, they didn't just show you this device, they showed you the software and user experience that will power their next generation of hardware. Because mark my words, the next Xbox will be built on the same foundations as this device. It will be a Windows 11 powered device that boots into the Xbox dashboard. It'll give you access to all of your games no matter where you've bought them. The next Xbox will be a PC in the same way that the Xbox Ally is a PC. Xbox's Play Anywhere strategy is now entering its next phase, and this device is actually the first salvo in the next generation console war. It's smart positioning, with Xbox betting the house on player choice and a device agnostic future, giving you the freedom to move seamlessly between devices. Nintendo and Sony are still fully leveraged into a strategy based on exclusives, and that strategy has served them well for 30 plus years, but does that strategy still work in an era of cloud streaming and subscription services and cross-platform purchases? The ROG Xbox Ally is the first piece of hardware that really forces us to confront that question, and I think it's a question we're going to be asking a lot over the next few years. Let me tell you about the most recent time I used this video sponsor, Surfshark VPN. So you might have seen that I recently reviewed Destiny Rising, the mobile game currently in closed alpha testing. So the thing about that game is that it's not yet available in Australia. So even though NetEase invited me to play, I wasn't able to access any of the servers because I was geo-locked from being able to play on the US-based servers. Well, not if Surfshark has anything to say about it. Surfshark has a fantastic, absolutely seamless and super user-friendly mobile app, so all I had to do was boot it up, select a US server, connect to it, and in seconds, that geo wall evaporated, and I was able to connect to Destiny Rising without any problems at all. That is how quick, easy, and seamless it is to use Surfshark, and I use it so often at this point because the net is getting more and more carved up by all these geo-locks. Like, I was just in the States and I wanted to connect to an Australian-based streaming platform called Binge so I could watch The Sopranos for like the 80th time, but because I was in the US, the app wouldn't let me connect. So again, on my iPad, I just booted up Surfshark, connected to an Australian server node, and boom, gabagool all night long. There's also the security angle too, since Surfshark VPN encrypts your data, making it safer to browse the internet. Surfshark even offers a complete security package, including stuff like antivirus and anti-malware tools, real-time reports if a company that has some of your personal data gets hacked, and even a masked email generator that lets you create dummy emails when you want to sign up to something without having to hand over your actual email address. And yeah, there is also the online shopping angle, where access to regional pricing can get you some tidy discounts depending on what you're buying and where you're buying it from. Best of all, Surfshark is incredibly affordable. I really recommend clicking the link below and just seeing how inexpensive it is to properly protect yourself online and get all these benefits. For real, if this gives you access to just one regional pricing discount, that's going to go a long way towards this paying for itself. It's insane value given the freedom, discounts, and peace of mind. And if you sign up at surfshark.com/skillup, you can get an additional 4 months for free. That's surfshark.com/skillup for a handsome holiday discount and 4 additional months for free. You'll find that link below in the description and the pinned comment. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.